I was reborn right before the Ivy League early admissions deadline. With the knowledge from my previous life, I was the most brilliant candidate for Harvard and Yale. But in the final round for the prestigious scholarship, I lost to my deskmate, Weston Miller. He was a guy who couldn't even explain the Pythagorean theorem. He clearly didn't know how to solve a basic quadratic equation. Yet he managed to solve the most complex calculus problem in seconds. Everyone turned on me, calling me a fraud. They claimed my perfect grades were all thanks to stolen answers. I had no way to prove my innocence. Translation: if 3 people are in a room and one of them can throw a punch, you better start begging for mercy. Reviewing the old to know the new translation. I'll beat you so hard you'll never forget the past, and you'll learn new ways to suffer. Do not do unto others what you would not have them do to you. Translation: the beating you don't want is exactly what I'm going to serve you every single day. Kira Vance is truly the anchor of St. Jude's Academy, another perfect score on the mock stats. Harvard is a guarantee. Forget Harvard. Kira is definitely going to be the top student in the entire state this year. Dean of Admissions patted my shoulder, looking incredibly proud. Kira, the school's centennial reputation rests on your shoulders. This early admission scholarship belongs to you. Hold on. A voice suddenly exploded from the back of the classroom. Everyone turned to look. It was Weston Miller, the transfer student, who had joined us 3 months ago. He was also my desk mate. He stepped out of the crowd with a perfectly timed shy smile. But I could see the calculation hiding deep in his eyes. Since this is a public scholarship, everyone should have a chance to compete. I'd like to try. The classroom immediately erupted in snickers. Do you even know what this scholarship means? You think you can just try? Talk about delusional. You got an 18 on the last math quiz, and a 22 in English. You can't even solve for X. How dare you compare yourself to Kira? Weston immediately lowered his head, looking like a victim. I know my basics are weak. I'm not worthy of being compared to Kira. But I just want a fair chance. Is that so wrong? Lulu Thorne, the school's queen bee, stood up from the front row. She narrowed her eyes at the crowd. What's wrong with Weston trying? Who gave you the right to mock him? Maybe he's a hidden genius. Lulu was the principal's daughter. The moment she spoke, the students who were laughing shut their mouths instantly. The dean frowned deeply. Lulu, don't be ridiculous. The bonus question on this mock exam was at a competitive collegiate level. There's no way Weston can do it. He can learn. Lulu walked over to Weston, shielding him like a protective lioness. She lifted her chin and looked at me. Kira, you're not scared, are you? Let's settle it with this bonus question. Whoever solves it first gets the scholarship spot. Do you dare? Looking at this scene, one that was carved into my soul from my past life, my fingers tightened around my pen. My knuckles turned white, but my expression remained calm. I intentionally thought of the answer as 1 in my head, even though the real answer was 0. Sure enough, as soon as the challenge was issued, Weston blurted out the answer. The answer to this problem is 1. You can solve it in 3 steps using LH Patel's rule. The room went silent for a second before a wave of shock hit. Didn't they say he couldn't even handle basic functions? How does he know LH Patel's rule? Lulu's eyes lit up with excitement as she grabbed Weston's arm. Weston, you're amazing. I knew you were a genius. She turned back to me, her chin held even higher. Kira, you heard him. Who won? I looked at the flicker of triumph in Weston's eyes and let out a cold smile. My theory from my previous life was correct. He wasn't a genius or a reborn soul. He was just a thief stealing my thoughts. Whatever I thought, he would copy it word for word. In my last life, he used this ability to snatch the top spot in the state exams. Then he turned the tables and accused me of plagiarism. The entire school believed his lies. They said I had lost my talent and was stealing his work to maintain my top student persona. I was disqualified. My parents died in a car accident while traveling to clear my name. I ended up dying alone and broken in a tiny apartment. Now I'm back. It's 3 days before the final decision. Since he loves stealing so much, I'm going to give him a gift he'll never forget. I smiled calmly and put down my pen. The new generation surpasses the old. I admit defeat in this round. Lulu nodded with satisfaction. She dragged Weston toward the dean. Dean Higgins. You hurt her. Kira admitted defeat. The scholarship should go to Weston. The dean looked horrified. No, absolutely not. Kira has been the top student in the state for 3 years. Weston just got lucky with one question. We can't just give it to him. What do you mean lucky? Lulu scoffed. Being able to solve a competition-level problem is skill. If Kira can't beat him, she doesn't deserve the spot. She rolled her eyes and continued. Besides, Kira can get into an Ivy on her own. But Weston needs this. Can't you have some compassion for him? The dean was shaking with rage, unable to find words. Just then the principal walked in. Lulu immediately ran to him, grabbing his arm. Dad, Weston is a total genius. Give him the scholarship. He won't let you down. The principal looked at a confident Weston, and then at a calm me. He hesitated for a moment. Let's do this. We'll have a final assessment tomorrow. I'll set the questions myself. You two will compete in 3 rounds. Whoever wins more rounds gets the spot. The next day, the assessment took place in the conference room. The principal personally designed the test. The first question was a complex analysis of classic literature. The moment I formulated the perfect answer in my head, Weston spoke up. He recited my thoughts word for word. The principal was shocked and delighted. He slammed the table. Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. The second question was a difficult physics problem involving electromagnetism. Again, as soon as I calculated the result and mapped out the steps in my mind, Weston blurted it out. Even his sequence of steps matched mine perfectly. The third question was an advanced creative writing prompt in French. Weston beat me to it again. He spoke the exact sentences I was reciting in my mind, not changing a single grammar structure. When the 3 rounds ended, the conference room was dead silent. Every teacher looked at Weston with disbelief. A genius. A once-in-a-century talent. I can't believe we had someone like this in our school. We really missed it. It looks like the state rankings are going to change this year. I heard a teacher whisper nearby. No wonder Kira's been off lately. She's burnt out. Yeah, I thought she was special. Turns out she's just a rote learner who hit her limit. Weston listened to the gossip, his arrogance practically overflowing. He gave me a provocative look and a winner's smirk. I stared back at him with total composure. In my head, I was already planning the gourmet feast I'd serve him on the day of the finals. The principal patted Weston's shoulder. Good lad, you didn't disappoint. From today on, the scholarship is yours. Weston was shaking with excitement. Thank you, principal. I won't let you down. Lulu hugged him, beaming. Weston, I knew you were the best. I watched the happy scene and suddenly spoke up. Since the spot is Weston's, I won't be taking the SATs. My parents want to take me on a trip to relax. The smile on Weston's face froze instantly. He blurted out, No, you have to go. The moment he said it, Weston realized he had messed up. He quickly tried to explain. I mean, the SATs are a huge deal. It's a waste if you don't go. Besides, having you there will motivate me more. Lulu chimed in, Exactly, Kira. How can you skip it? If you don't show up, people will think we bullied you into leaving. The principal also frowned and advised me. Kira, I know you're upset, but you should still take the test. Even without the scholarship you can get into a top-tier school. I sighed with a fake sense of helplessness. Fine. Since everyone feels so strongly, I'll go. Weston let out a huge sigh of relief. He looked at me with a gaze full of gratitude. He thought I had softened. He had no idea I was just waiting for him to say those words. I was waiting for the actual exam day. The day of the finals arrived quickly. Weston and I were assigned to the same testing hall. He sat diagonally in front of me, perfectly positioned to tilt his ear toward me. Before entering, Lulu ran over and handed Weston a cold bottle of water. Weston, good luck. I know you'll be the state's #1. Weston smiled confidently. Don't worry. It's in the bag. He turned to me and whispered, Kira, thank you. When I get into Harvard, I'll make sure to thank you properly. I just smiled and said nothing. The bell rang, signaling the start of the exam. He sat up straight, his ear slightly twitching toward me like a rat sniffing for food. I began a frantic output in my mind. Question 1 is B. Question 2 is D. For the literature translation, a gentleman reflects on himself daily becomes a gentleman reflects on whether he's been beaten enough today. Using a horse and carriage doesn't make your feet faster, but it gets you further becomes those who use. Horses aren't fast, they're just running away from a beating. In front of me, Weston's pen started flying. He was bubbling the sheet at an incredible speed. I continued my mental narration. For the reading comprehension on The Great Gatsby, the main theme is the author's burning hatred for young people who are lazy. Every line is actually a hidden insult to those who have no ambition. Weston scribbled away, copying these absurdities word for word. Finally, we reached the essay section. I looked at the prompt about tradition and innovation. A cold smile touched my lips as I recited the essay in my head. Word by word, the essay should go like this. Tradition is a shackle of the education system, a cage for geniuses. Only those who break the rules are true masters. This exam itself is a sieve for the mediocre. It cannot hold true talent. It only grinds vibrant souls into identical molds. I would rather gamble everything on my own path than be a puppet of the testing system. I intentionally slowed down my thoughts to ensure Weston didn't miss a single word. He was so absorbed in writing that his body leaned forward. Sweat dripped from his forehead. He didn't even notice the proctor walking up behind him. The female proctor caught a glimpse of his first sentence. Her face went pale instantly. She quickly walked over to the senior proctor and whispered something. The two shared a shocked look and stood behind Weston, silently watching him write. Weston finally sensed something was wrong. He looked up and met the icy stares of the proctors. His heart skipped a beat. But then he thought, I'm copying Kira's answers. There's no way they're wrong. He lowered his head and kept writing. The bell rang at 11:30 a.m. to end the first session. Weston was the first to turn in his paper. He walked out of the hall with his chest out, looking like he already owned the state. Lulu rushed to him with a soda. Weston, how was it? Too easy. Weston wiped his sweat. The essay was my best work. I'm definitely getting a perfect score. Nearby, Silas Ward walked out. He was the top student from a rival school. Hearing Weston, he frowned and whispered to me. He finished 30 minutes early? I barely finished my conclusion. I smiled. Yeah, he's very fast. Silas watched Weston and Lulu with a look of pure confusion. Silas was a real scholar who relied on hard work. After a 2-hour break, the afternoon math section began. The moment I got the booklet, I knew the answers. But I didn't write. I just thought, multiple choice 1 to 6 are all A. 7 to 12 are all C. The grid-den answers are 0, 100, 100 and 250. Weston didn't hesitate. He filled them all in exactly as I thought. The senior proctor walked by and saw his answer sheet. He couldn't help but shake his head. He had taught math for 30 years. He had never seen someone fill out multiple choice bubbles so uniformly with such obviously wrong choices. Then came the final, most difficult problem. It was a complex calculus derivation. Almost no one in the room could solve it besides me. I thought for this one, just force it using Taylor expansion. Step 1, let x equal 1. Step 2, find the second derivative. Step 3, the answer is 0. Finally, add a note. Honestly, Professor, I don't know this. I'm just guessing. Please give me some partial credit. Weston took it all. He copied every single word onto his sheet. After writing the last sentence, he stretched and gave a mocking look to the students still struggling around him. The proctor walked over and read his final note. The man's face turned bright red with anger. He wanted to say something, but he restrained himself. He just made a heavy mark on the proctor's log. When the math session ended, Weston practically strutted out of the examination hall. He looked so proud of himself that it was almost painful to watch. Lulu immediately rushed over and wrapped both hands around his arm. You finished early again, didn't you? Weston smirked. Of course. Honestly, this year's finals were too easy. Several nearby students overheard him and gasped. One girl whispered, "That's insane. The math section was brutal." Another muttered, "He's definitely taking the number 1 rank." Weston heard every word. His back straightened even more. Meanwhile, I slowly packed my pencils into my bag and walked out without saying anything. Silas caught up beside me near the stairwell. He lowered his voice carefully. Kira, are you okay? I looked at him. Why wouldn't I be? Silas hesitated. I don't know. Something feels strange. Weston answers too perfectly. It's like, he stopped himself midway. I smiled faintly. Like he's reading my mind? Silas laughed awkwardly. That would be impossible. Yeah, I said softly. Impossible. But the look in his eyes told me he wasn't fully convinced. Across the courtyard, Lulu suddenly called out loudly on purpose. Weston, after your perfect score tomorrow, don't forget us little people when you're at Harvard. Everyone nearby laughed along obediently. Weston raised his chin modestly, pretending to be humble. I still need the final scores first. But the greed in his eyes was impossible to hide. That night, the entire school forum exploded. Weston Miller, the dark horse genius. St. Jude's new king. Some people even started mocking me openly online. Looks like Kira's era is over. Guess hard work loses to natural talent. She was overrated from the beginning. I heard she cried during the exam. I scrolled through every comment calmly while sitting at my desk. My mother knocked gently on the bedroom door. Sweetheart, are you all right? I quickly closed my phone and smiled. I'm fine. She walked in carrying a plate of sliced fruit. Her eyes were full of concern. In my previous life, those same eyes had cried themselves red trying to defend me after Weston accused me of plagiarism. This time, I wouldn't let that happen. My father leaned against the doorway. No matter what happens with the rankings, we're proud of you. My chest tightened painfully for a second. I forced myself to smile wider. Don't worry. Everything's going according to plan. They exchanged confused looks, but didn't press further. After they left, I reopened my laptop. Then I began typing a document titled, Evidence of Academic Theft. Inside were dozens of observations from both lives. Timing patterns. Repeated wording. Exact sentence duplication. Behavioral triggers. Every strange detail about Weston. Of course, none of it was enough to prove supernatural cheating. But I didn't need to prove how he did it. I only needed everyone to realize he was a fraud. The next morning was the final session. Science and open response interviews. The most important part of the entire examination process. Students gathered nervously outside the hall. Weston stood in the center of attention while Lulu hyped him up like he was already a celebrity. After today, reporters are definitely going to interview you. A transfer student becoming state number 1? That's legendary. Weston laughed confidently. It's honestly not that impressive. I walked past them quietly. Weston suddenly grabbed my wrist. His voice lowered. Kira, thanks for not giving up halfway. I looked at him innocently. Why would I? His lips curled upward. Because losing to me this badly must feel terrible. I almost laughed in his face. Instead, I simply said, we'll see. The interview round began shortly afterward. Each top student entered individually, before a panel of university representatives and academic judges. Weston went first. Through the glass waiting room, I could see him sitting proudly across from the panel. One professor asked a question about economic ethics. Weston froze for half a second. Then, outside in the waiting room, I deliberately began thinking nonsense. Economic stability is best achieved through interpretive dance and aggressive bird ownership. Inside the room, Weston immediately opened his mouth confidently. Economic stability is best achieved through interpretive dance and aggressive bird ownership. Silence. Absolute silence. One judge blinked slowly. Another removed his glasses entirely. Weston himself froze. His face lost all color instantly. But before he could recover, I continued thinking. International diplomacy should rely primarily on rock-paper-scissors tournaments between world leaders. Weston swallowed nervously and repeated it word for word. A judge finally frowned deeply. Mr. Miller, are you feeling all right? Sweat immediately appeared on Weston's forehead. He panicked. For the first time, he realized something was wrong. Desperately, he tried to stop relying on me. The next question came quickly. Can you explain your views on scientific responsibility? Weston opened his mouth. Nothing came out. because without my thoughts, he had absolutely nothing. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5 seconds. The room became painfully awkward. A judge finally said carefully, "Take your time." Weston stammered helplessly. Outside the room, I smiled quietly to myself. Then I deliberately thought. Science responsibility means scientists should apologize to plants before stepping on grass. Weston immediately blurted it out in a rush like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. One of the interviewers actually looked offended. Another began writing furious notes on his clipboard. By the time Weston stumbled out of the interview room, his face was completely pale. Lulu immediately rushed toward him. "Weston? What happened?" He grabbed her shoulders almost violently. "Did Kira go yet?" Lulu looked startled. And no. Weston immediately turned toward me with bloodshot eyes. For the very first time since he entered my life, I saw genuine fear on his face. I smiled sweetly at him. Then I walked into the interview room. 10 minutes later, laughter occasionally drifted out from inside. The judges looked relaxed, interested, engaged. When I answered questions, I used my real thoughts this time. No traps. No nonsense. Because unlike Weston, I actually knew the material. When I exited, several professors were smiling. One even stopped me at the door. "Miss Vance, regardless of the final rankings, your future is extremely bright." Behind me, I heard Lulu arguing desperately with Weston in hushed whispers. "You said you were a genius." Weston snapped back harshly. "Shut up." Lulu looked stunned. He had never spoken to her that way before. Around us, whispers slowly began spreading among the students. Did Weston mess up? I heard he answered every question like a crazy person. No way. Silas looked at me from across the hallway. This time, there was no confusion left in his eyes. Only realization. And Weston knew it too. The final rankings were released 3 days later. The entire school gathered around the electronic board in the main hall before sunrise. The atmosphere buzzed with nervous excitement. Phones were out. People were already preparing to record the moment the state rankings dropped. Lulu stood beside Weston holding his arm tightly. "Don't stress," she whispered. "Even if the interview went weird, your written scores were insane." Weston forced a smile, but his face looked gray. His eyes kept drifting toward me standing quietly near the back of the crowd. He hadn't slept in days. I could tell. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes, and every few seconds his expression twitched with panic. Because deep down he finally understood something terrifying. If he couldn't hear my thoughts, he was nothing. The screen refreshed. The rankings appeared. State rank number 1 Kira Vance. Perfect composite score. The hall exploded. Gasps echoed everywhere. Someone shouted, "Impossible." Another student yelled, "Wait, then what about Weston?" My eyes slowly shifted downward on the board. State rank number 247. Weston Miller. Failed essay section. Flagged interview review. Multiple disciplinary notes. Silence swallowed the hallway whole. Lulu stared at the screen as if her soul had left her body. "No," she whispered. Weston pushed through the crowd violently until he stood directly in front of the rankings. His hands trembled so badly they looked broken. No, that's impossible." He kept scrolling frantically as if the screen itself had made a mistake. But the numbers didn't change. His math section barely passed. His literature score was catastrophic. And his interview evaluation contained a single devastating sentence. Candidate displayed repeated incoherent responses inconsistent with claimed academic ability. The whispers began instantly. Wait. Then how did he suddenly become a genius before? Was he cheating? No wonder his answers sounded insane during the interview. I heard he literally talked about apologizing to grass. Laughter slowly spread through the hall. At first it was quiet, then louder, then uncontrollable. Weston's face turned bright red. "Shut up," he screamed. The crowd immediately recoiled. But the damage was already done. Silas stepped forward calmly. "Actually, I think everyone deserves to know something." The hall quieted again. Silas pulled out his phone. "During the practice assessments, I noticed something strange. Every time Kira changed her answer suddenly, Weston changed too. Every single time. He tapped the screen and projected several recorded clips from group study sessions onto the hallway monitor. In one clip, I casually joked that the answer to a chemistry problem was penguin migration. Weston immediately nodded and repeated the exact phrase with complete seriousness. Another clip showed me muttering random French nonsense under my breath. Seconds later, Weston confidently used the same fake sentence structure aloud. Murmurs exploded around us. What the hell? That's creepy. Did he just copy literally everything she said? Lulu turned toward Weston in horror. Weston, what's going on? His breathing became ragged. Then suddenly, his eyes locked onto me with pure hatred. You did this on purpose. I smiled calmly. Did what? You fed me wrong answers, he screamed. The entire hall fell silent again. The moment the words left his mouth, Weston realized too late what he had admitted. My smile widened slightly. Fed you. His pupils shrank violently. Sweat poured down his forehead. I didn't mean. But nobody was listening anymore. The teachers looked at him with dawning disgust. The principal's expression darkened completely. Dean Higgins stepped forward coldly. Weston Miller. Are you admitting that your answers came from Kira? Weston opened and closed his mouth like a suffocating fish. He couldn't explain the truth. Because who would believe he could steal thoughts? Lulu slowly released his arm like touching him disgusted her. You lied to me? Weston turned desperately toward her. Lulu, listen. All this time. Her voice cracked sharply. You made everyone think Kira was a fraud. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped backward. Around them, students began pulling out phones again. This time not to celebrate him. To record his downfall. Weston looked around wildly at the disgusted faces surrounding him. Then finally, his eyes landed on me one last time. In my previous life, I had stood exactly where he was now. Alone. Humiliated. Destroyed while everyone laughed. The difference was that I had been innocent. He wasn't. Weston suddenly lunged toward me like he wanted to strangle me. You ruined my life. Before he could reach me, several teachers grabbed him instantly. He struggled violently while screaming incoherently. The principal roared. Take him to the office now. Weston was dragged away in front of the entire school. His perfect genius image shattered completely. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I finally felt like I could breathe. But I underestimated how desperate someone becomes when they've tasted power once before. That evening, the school released an official statement revoking Weston's scholarship and nullifying all his examination recommendations pending investigation. The story spread online faster than wildfire. Clips of his bizarre interview answers flooded social media. Economic stability through aggressive bird ownership became a nationwide meme overnight. People mocked him endlessly. Former classmates exposed every arrogant thing he'd said over the past few months. Students from other schools laughed at him publicly. Even the state academic committee launched a formal inquiry. And Weston snapped. 3 days later, I stayed late at school organizing recommendation paperwork for Yale. Most students had already gone home. The campus was unusually quiet. I stepped into the empty stairwell carrying a stack of folders. Then the door slammed shut behind me. My footsteps stopped instantly. Weston stood at the bottom of the stairs. His uniform was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles hung heavily beneath them like bruises. He looked less like a top student, and more like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Kira. His voice sounded terrifyingly calm. I tightened my grip on the folders. You shouldn't be here. You're suspended. He laughed softly. It sounded unhinged. You know what's funny? He slowly climbed one stair at a time toward me. I used to think I was chosen. I said nothing. The first time I heard someone else's thoughts, I thought it was fate. His lips twisted bitterly. Then I met you. His eyes burned into mine. Do you know how perfect your mind is? The words sent chills down my spine. You always knew the answers. Always knew what to say. Everyone admired you so easily. His voice became sharper with every sentence. Do you know how unfair that felt? So you stole from me, I replied coldly. I borrowed what the world wasted on you, he shouted suddenly. His expression twisted violently. You had everything already. Talent, parents, teachers, opportunities. His chest heaved. And me? I was invisible. For a moment, the stairwell fell silent except for his unstable breathing. Then he smiled again. But it's okay now. Something about that smile made my instincts scream. Weston slowly pulled a small recording device from his pocket. I spent days thinking about it, he whispered. If I expose your ability first, maybe people will finally believe me. I frowned. My ability? Stop pretending, he snapped. You're the real monster here. Nobody normal could predict everything like this. I finally understood. He couldn't accept that he lost because he was ordinary without me. So he needed to turn me into something unnatural too. Weston raised the recorder with trembling hands. I'm going to make you admit it. Then he rushed toward me. The folders slipped from my arms and scattered across the stairs. Papers flew everywhere like frightened birds. Weston grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt, shoving the recorder toward my face. Say it, he shouted wildly. Tell them you can control people's thoughts. I twisted against his grip. You're insane. No. His face contorted. You're the reason this happened to me. His emotions were completely unstable now. Rage, panic, desperation, all tangled together. In my previous life, this was the moment I had feared most. The moment where nobody would come. The moment where I would be cornered alone while he destroyed everything around me. But this life was different. Footsteps suddenly thundered above us. Kira. Silas appeared at the top of the stairwell with 2 teachers behind him. His face changed instantly when he saw Weston grabbing me. Let her go. Weston panicked. His grip tightened painfully for 1 second before he tried to pull me backward down the stairs with him. But in his frenzy, his foot slipped. Everything happened at once. His balance broke. His eyes widened in horror. Then Weston tumbled backward down the staircase. The recorder flew from his hand and shattered against the wall. Bang, bang, bang. His body slammed violently against the steps until he finally collapsed at the bottom landing. Silence. Complete silence. The teachers rushed forward immediately while Silas pulled me safely behind him. My entire body was shaking uncontrollably. Weston groaned weakly from below. Blood trickled from the corner of his forehead. He tried to sit up, but one of the teachers sharply ordered him not to move. An ambulance arrived minutes later. By nighttime, everyone in school knew what happened. Rumors spread everywhere. Some said Weston attacked me because he couldn't handle losing his reputation. Others claimed he'd gone completely mentally unstable after the investigation began. Either way, nobody defended him anymore. The academic committee completed their review a week later. All of Weston's exam scores were permanently invalidated. His scholarship opportunities disappeared overnight. Multiple universities blacklisted him after reviewing the interview footage and misconduct reports. His parents quietly transferred him out of state shortly afterward. I never saw him again. As for Lulu, she disappeared for nearly 2 weeks out of embarrassment. When she finally returned to school, she looked completely different. No designer ribbons. No arrogant attitude. No crowd following behind her. One afternoon, she stopped me outside the library. I owe you an apology, she said stiffly, unable to meet my eyes. I waited silently. Her fingers tightened around the books in her arms. I treated you horribly because I wanted to believe I discovered someone special before everyone else did. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I was just stupid. You were manipulated, I said calmly. No, she shook her head. I chose to ignore every sign because it was easier. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly added, I'm sorry about your parents too. About everything. This time, her apology sounded real. I nodded once. Thank you. And that was enough. Spring passed quickly after that. The final college acceptance letters arrived in April. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia. Every envelope on the table carried congratulations in embossed gold lettering. My mother cried before I even opened the second one. My father looked so proud he could barely speak. In the end, I chose Yale. On the night before graduation, I stood alone on the football field under the stadium lights. The campus was quiet, peaceful. Footsteps approached softly behind me. Silas handed me a canned coffee before sitting beside me on the bleachers. You know, he said casually, half the state still thinks you're secretly psychic. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. Let them think whatever they want. Silas studied me carefully. So, are you? I looked out across the empty field, remembering everything from both lives. The humiliation, the rage, the loneliness, the second chance I never should have gotten. Then I smiled faintly. What do you think? Silas groaned. That's such a suspicious answer. I laughed again, louder this time. And somewhere deep inside me, the weight I'd carried across 2 lifetimes finally disappeared. In my previous life, Weston stole my future and left me broken. But this time, I took it back.